Good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining us tonight on your favorite streaming device for special coverage of the 2021 State of the State Address. I'm Andy Curtis. Governor Greg Gianforte will deliver his first State of the State before joint session of the Montana House and Montana Senate. He will outline his priorities, talk about the impact of COVID-19 on the people of Montana and the economy. Now let's go live to the Montana House Chamber.
Center, face. Ready, step.
Thank you, members of the Montana Army National Guard, Color Guard, and the Diamondback Choir. Members, please rise for the invocation by Father Patrick Beretta, parish priest at St. Patrick's and Immaculate Conception Church in Butte.
Almighty God and Creator, thank you for the incomparable gifts of beauty, vastness, diversity, and history with which you richly blessed our state. Please bless this assembly elected to represent the people of our state. Bless our governor and his administration. May they lead us as a people tired of divisions, dreaming of ways of reconciliation, and yearning to be one people, respectful of all, especially the most vulnerable. So many have been cruelly hurt by the pandemic. May the work accomplished in this revered chamber be sensitive to their grief, losses, anxieties, and economic pains. There is so much more to recovery than economics. And so may all Montanans work together well to recover from this crisis with calmness, intelligence, imagination, resilience, and compassion, reflecting a tenderness of heart. And please give us the grace, dear Heavenly Father, to experience an unforgettable dawn of renewed hope, a bright and colorful sunrise over the icy majesty of our winter landscapes and over the warm, and generous nature of the exceptional people of Montana. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Father Beretta. Members, you may be seated. Sergeant of Arms Spencer.
Mr. President, the committee to escort Governor Gianforte awaits entrance to the House chamber.
Sergeant of Arms Spencer, will you please admit the Governor Gianforte and into the House chambers? Ladies and gentlemen, I have the high honor and great privilege now to present to you and the people of Montana, the Governor of the State of Montana, the Honorable Greg Gianforte.
Thank you. Thank you. Lieutenant Governor Juris, President Blaisdell, Speaker Galt, members of the 67th Legislature, my fellow statewide officials, tribal leaders, honored members of the judiciary, and members of the cabinet, my wife Susan, our kids, and our grandson, and finally, my fellow Montanans, serving you is the highest honor and privilege of my life. You have entrusted me to lead the Montana comeback, and I am humbled. From our seniors to our hopeful kids, from our Main Street business owners to our hardworking farmers and ranchers, from our men and women in uniform to our veterans who have answered the call. I had the opportunity to welcome home members of the Montana National Guard this week. On short notice, they were activated, flew to Washington, D.C., and fulfilled their mission to ensure a peaceful transfer of power. And now, thankfully, they're back home. Only weeks before, in the same U.S. Capitol, it had been under siege by a violent mob intent on destroying our democratic institutions. It's a day we won't forget. It revealed just how fragile our republic can be. It also reaffirmed, though, how resilient we are as a nation. Hours after storming the Capitol, the House and Senate came back into session and finished their work, certifying the next President of the United States. That resiliency is also what defines us as Montanans. This last year has brought real, serious challenges. But through it, we've seen the resiliency of Montanans. The first case of COVID was reported in Montana on March 11th. Almost 11 months later, Montana has seen 93,000 cases, and sadly, more than 1,200 Montanans have lost their lives. In the 4 months after the first case, more than 150,000 Montanans filed for unemployment. And since that time, an untold number of businesses have had to close, some for good. Men and women who took an idea and invested their savings and energy and lives saw what they built disappear. The victims of pandemic-induced restrictions and mandated closures. And despite all of these stark challenges and dark days, Montanans remain resilient. We found our heroes in the doctors and nurses on the front lines, like Dr. Paul Johnson, a husband and a father in Great Falls. He works at Benefice, and for 13 weeks, Dr. Johnson treated COVID-19 patients and lived out of his camper. He did that and went to that great length so he could keep his family safe and keep the virus out of their home. We found our heroes and our first responders, like firefighters, law enforcement officers, and other first responders in Butte. Despite the pandemic straining their resources, they still showed up to host a parade for the Montana Special Olympics. We found our heroes in our educators, like Christy Borge, a fourth-generation Montanan who teaches 11 students in a one-room schoolhouse in Polaris. When the pandemic disrupted regular instruction, Christy had summer school outside just to keep her students on track. We found our heroes in truckers who kept our supply chains moving and grocery store clerks who kept the shelves full, like Myron Aschenbacher, a Montanan who's been trucking for 30 years. With truck stops, rest areas, and restaurants closed along his route, Myron had to do without some basic necessities, all while keeping our supply chains moving. We found our heroes in small business owners and others who helped support our response to the pandemic, like Steel Toed Distillery in Potomac, which partnered with veterans nonprofit organizations to make hand sanitizer, like Dayspring Restoration, whose employees washed and disinfected first responder vehicles for free, like Billings Clinic, which provided free child care to essential healthcare workers. We found heroes next door, in our friends and neighbors, the people who checked on seniors to make sure they were okay when the state was under a lockdown, the people who sewed masks for healthcare providers and emergency responders when PPE was in short supply. In Montana, neighbors help neighbors. It's what we do, and it's what we've done during this difficult year. Our Montana resiliency has shone bright, and it's an example to other states. And while we are resilient, the pandemic remains the biggest challenge we face today. Addressing it is my top priority as your governor. And we've begun improving how we confront this pandemic. On my second day in office, we changed the state's vaccine distribution plan to protect the most vulnerable. These changes are saving lives. Our focus is on ensuring that those most at risk get vaccinated. Seniors 70 and older, our family, friends, and neighbors with severe underlying medical conditions like cancer and heart disease. They're on the front line now, and they're getting their vaccinations. As of today, Montanans have received more than 92,000 doses, and nearly 22,000 Montanans are fully vaccinated. At the end of the week, nearly all of our long-term care facilities and nursing homes will have had at least one vaccination clinic, and the second one is scheduled. And while we are quickly deploying the doses we receive to communities throughout Montana, our supplies from the federal government aren't keeping up with our demand. Each week, we ask for as many doses as the federal government can get to us. And we have proven in Montana that we can get the vaccine quickly into the arms of our most vulnerable. We just need more vaccines. That is why today I asked President Biden to do everything in his power to ramp up production and send more vaccines to Montana. We need them. And while we face a public health crisis, we also face an economic crisis. Too many Montanans lost their jobs and found themselves without a paycheck through no fault of their own. Too many small business owners closed their doors for good. Too many farmers and ranchers struggled with uncertainty. Too many students were left to learn in front of a computer instead of a classroom. We are writing the course and improving our response. We consulted with public health officials, healthcare providers, and business leaders. And 9 days after I was sworn in, we lifted the arbitrary restrictions on limited hours of operation and capacity for restaurants and other small businesses. Instead, we're relying on business owners to follow industry best practices and public health guidance, rather than relying on the long reach and heavy hand of government. As we continue to move forward, we need to protect businesses, nonprofit organizations, places of worship, and healthcare providers from lawsuits, provided they make a good faith effort to protect their staff and customers. I appreciate the urgency with which the legislature has acted to pass Steve Fitzpatrick's bipartisan bill that will do just that. I look forward to getting SB 65 to my desk so we can take that critical step towards getting Montana safely open for business, moving towards incentives and personal responsibility and away from impractical government mandates. I look forward to, and I know many of you do as well, to the day when we can take off our masks, throw them in the trash, and go about our lives in a safe manner. In the meantime, I'll continue wearing one, and I encourage you to do so as well. Finally, as hard as 2020 was for Montana workers and business owners who were just trying to get by, the last thing we all needed was for government to get in the way. But that's exactly what happened in the fall. The state government, under the previous administration, sued 5 businesses, all in Flathead County, alleging they did not adequately enforce the mask mandate. The first judge to hear the case ruled against the state, saying it didn't have enough evidence and that the businesses made reasonable efforts. A pandemic with severe economic fallout is bad enough. We don't need government piling on as well. That's why tonight I'm announcing I've directed our staff to seek dismissal of the litigation against these businesses. Enough is enough. As we continue making progress to address the economic fallout from the pandemic, we are guided by 3 clear principles. First, we must get our economy going again. Second, we must get Montana open for business. And third, we must get Montanans back to work in good-paying jobs. As we lead the Montana comeback, we can't just talk about these things, we must do them. Businesses and the jobs they create are fleeing high-tax, high-regulation states and moving to states where the business climate is friendlier, with lower taxes and less red tape. Unfortunately, Montana is not competitive today. Montana taxpayers with at least $18,500 in income of taxable income pay our top tax income rate. More than half of Montana taxpayers pay that top rate of 6.9%. Look across our competitors in the Rocky Mountain West. Of the 8 states in our region, Montana ranks 7th near the bottom. We used to have the highest income tax rate in the country at 11% before we cut it to 6.9% 18 years ago. That made us competitive then, but no longer. Since then, Idaho has cut their rate to ours, and Utah, Arizona, and New Mexico cut their rates at least 2 points below Montana. That's a stark difference, and it's one of the reasons why we're losing out on opportunities and good jobs. Our high rate drives away too many businesses that want to locate in Montana. The effects of that are very real. Montana loses out on good paying jobs and the tax revenue that comes with it. And when we lose out on opportunities and good paying jobs here, our kids and grandkids leave Montana to pursue them. Better jobs for better pay. To get our economy going again, to get Montana open for business, to get Montanans back to work in good paying jobs, we must make Montana competitive. We must lower our top personal income rate, and that's what I've proposed in my budget. Not only will the majority of Montana income taxpayers see relief, but also Montana will become more competitive. I thank Senator Hertz and Representative Knudsen for working on the Personal Income Tax Relief Act. But let's be clear, and I want to set the record straight tonight. We don't pay for it by cutting services. We pay for most of it by modernizing our corporate tax structure to reward businesses that create Montana jobs and make investments in Montana. Reducing the top rate is just a start. To make Montana more competitive, we must bring our income tax rates in line with other states in our region, but we must do it prudently. That's why I urge the legislature to send to my desk a bill that continues to reduce our uncompetitive income tax rate as our economy grows and we find efficiencies across the state. Our budget also creates an entrepreneur magnet, which encourages companies to establish their headquarters in Montana and create jobs here. I thank President Blaisdell and Representative Beard for their efforts to introduce the Entrepreneur Magnet Act. We must reform our tax system so our Main Street businesses can thrive and create jobs. Under the current system, Montana small business owners have to invest countless hours as they try to comply with our business equipment tax. They have to value their property, file paperwork, and pay the tax. This is a burdensome process that takes a lot of time. To reduce the burden on our small businesses, my budget calls for reforming the business equipment tax by exempting business equipment valued up to $200,000, boosting the exemption by 100%. The Big Jobs Act, or Business Investment Grows Jobs Act, eliminates the business equipment tax burden for 4,000 Montana small businesses. I appreciate the efforts of Representative Kazmaier and Senator Hoeven to get that bill to our colleagues here in the legislature. Thank you. The increased exemption also encourages our small business owners, farmers and ranchers, to invest in their businesses. When they make those investments, they support Montana businesses they buy from, retailers and manufacturers whose sales grow and who in turn create more jobs. I asked the legislature to pass and send me the Big Jobs Act. Together we can ease the burden on small business owners, encourage them to make investments, and to help them and Montana thrive. To make Montana more competitive, we also must get a better handle on our regulatory scheme. Burdensome, unnecessary red tape ties up small businesses, farms, and ranches. These regulations cost time and money. And ultimately, Montana consumers bear the burden with higher prices on goods and services. And the biggest burden falls on low and middle income families who are just trying to make ends meet. It's time to cut back this thicket of red tape, and it's one of my top priorities. That's why, on my second day in office, I signed an executive order to establish the Red Tape Relief Task Force, which Lieutenant Governor Juris will lead. I have charged the task force to complete a comprehensive, top-to-bottom review of regulations in every single agency across state government. They are to leave no stone unturned as they identify excessive, outdated, and unnecessary regulations. Our budget builds a stronger Montana workforce by prioritizing trades education. Many jobs require specialized skills, and we should ensure Montanans have access to the training and education they need to acquire and refine those skills. That's why my budget establishes the Montana Trades Education Credit, or MTEC. Our budget provides for as many as 1,000 scholarships per year by offering small businesses a 50% credit for their employees to learn a trade. Together, employers and employees can decide on training that's best for the business and the employee. Representative Jones and Senator Solomon, thank you for leading the effort on MTEC to strengthen our workforce, ensuring that Montana workers are well equipped to succeed. Taken together, these measures will make Montana more competitive, but it doesn't matter if no one knows about it. That's why we need to effectively promote a more competitive Montana to job creators. That's one reason I asked Scott Osterman to lead the Department of Commerce. A native of north central Montana, Scott has broad experience, including as a senior executive in Fortune 500 companies. He knows how to grow businesses. I gave Scott this charge: use your business experience to grow Montana's economy, create high-paying jobs, and bring Montanans back home. I will join Scott to promote a more competitive Montana and emphasize what really makes Montana a special place. First, the Montana work ethic is second to none. Montanans are hardworking, and they know the value and virtue of work. Second, our quality of life is second to none. Our public lands make this one of the best places to live, work, and raise a family. These are two of the reasons Susan and I decided to move to Montana, to put down roots, raise our family here, and start our business here. Our decision to move wasn't random. We didn't throw a dart at a map. I knew from my first trip to Montana nearly 45 years ago that I wanted to make Montana home. That's when Tim Frabel introduced me to Montana. His deep love of this state was infectious. He had trained at Malmstrom Air Force Base and flew missions in a P-51 over Japan during World War II. Jim was my junior high school science teacher, and he loved Montana so much that every year he brought 2 van loads of 9th graders to Montana. I came here in 1976 in one of those vans, and we hiked into the backcountry up to Black Canyon Lake and Grasshopper Glacier and on to the Absaroka Lake Plateau, and I was in love. I tell this story because Tim was a dedicated educator who shaped my life. There are many educators like Tim Frabel in Montana and throughout our country. They make lasting impacts in the lives of our students, not only imparting their knowledge, but also sharing their experience, wisdom, and passions. They make us better. And we should do everything we can to ensure any teacher who wants to start her career in Montana can. But Montana ranks at the bottom nationally in starting teacher pay. Wyoming's starting teacher pay is 45% higher than Montana. After receiving a teaching degree, a Montana student shouldn't have to choose between earning more in Wyoming or teaching in Montana with the worst salary in the country. That's what happened to a couple of teachers who used to live in central Montana, a husband and wife. They both taught in the same high school. They were early in their teaching careers. They were just starting a family. They soon realized that they couldn't raise a family and make ends meet on one salary. So they moved to Wyoming where they could. We must do better for our starting teachers. That's why my budget provides $2.5 million in incentives to schools to improve starting teacher pay. I encourage the legislature to pass the TEACH Act, or Tomorrow's Educators Are Coming Home Act, which Representative Jones is sponsoring. By increasing their pay, let's make it easier for our starting teachers to choose to stay in Montana or come back home. Let's make our communities stronger and our classrooms better with excellent starting teachers in them. Let's make their pay more competitive. Our kids will thank us for it. There are more young educators out there like Tim Frabel who want to teach our kids. Ultimately, our budget is about Montana priorities. It's about increasing opportunities here at home and bringing the American dream into greater reach for all Montanans. We should ensure every Montanan has an opportunity to realize it, earning a decent living, raising a family, contributing to our communities, retiring comfortably, and owning a home. One of our current taxes, however, jeopardizes part of the American dream for some of our lower income Montanans. Every 2 years, and always on schedule, reappraisals drive up our property taxes. These rising taxes threaten the American dream, particularly for lower income Montanans, people who have invested their lives in their homes, raised their families there, and have retired on a fixed income. Ever-rising property tax bills shouldn't force someone to have to make a difficult decision: pay the tax or sell their home. Pay the tax or put food on the table. Pay the tax or get their prescription drugs. That's why I propose the Keep Your Home Tax Relief Act in my budget. Keep Your Home provides $3 million per year over the next biennium to mitigate the impact of reappraisals on lower-income Montanans, including our seniors and disabled vets. I appreciate the work of Senator Hoeven, Representative Beard, and Representative Hopkins to get this critical bill introduced. Thank you. Part of the foundation of the American dream is safe communities, where we live and work and where our kids go to school. But our state faces a grave threat to our safety: drug use, particularly meth. The Department of Health and Human Services estimates about 64,000 Montanans have a substance abuse disorder. Addiction is tearing apart families and ravaging our communities. Few Montanans are untouched by this epidemic. There are devastating consequences of this crisis. Our treatment facilities are filling up, some unable to take new patients. Our corrections institutions are filling up with people who, after losing a battle with addiction, resort to increasingly violent crimes. Our first responders and frontline medical workers at hospitals not only confront it with overdoses, but also they see it in the innocents, the spouses, the children, the loved ones who are victims of meth-induced violence. Our schools see young people drop out as addiction overtakes them. Addiction leaves them falling farther and farther behind in their education and further off the path to a better life. Most tragically, the crisis of meth in Montana is dissolving families and endangering our kids. Meth use has transformed homes from places of love and care to ones of mistreatment and abandonment. Addicted parents neglect their children, leaving too many of our Montana kids fending for themselves. Kids go hungry, face constant food insecurity. Some fear their parents will become violent. Last year, 2 parents in Great Falls allegedly smoked meth in front of their 4 young children. Meth and drug paraphernalia were easily accessible to the kids. They were only 6, 3, 2, and 1 years old. The 2-year-old was covered with bruises, and a CT scan showed he had a skull fracture. Children who survive this abuse and neglect often end up in foster care, a system severely strained by meth. Montana has the second highest number of kids in foster care per capita in the entire country. 44% of all children in our foster care system are there because of parental meth use. The crisis is heartbreaking, and it has to stop. There is no silver bullet, but there are steps we can take to confront it. My budget begins to take some of those steps. It will make investments. So let me be clear. Tax revenues from the sale of recreational marijuana should go to confronting the epidemic of addiction in Montana. That's why my budget devotes the marijuana tax revenue and part of the tobacco tax settlement to the Heart Fund, or Healing and Ending Addiction Through Recovery and Treatment Fund. The Heart Fund will provide a full continuum of substance prevention and treatment programs for our communities. That full continuum of programs is critical. Under our current system, there are gaps in coverage that reduce effectiveness. In some communities, there are no coordinated prevention programs. In other communities, there's gaps in meth treatment. In some communities, there's a lack of local recovery support for someone leaving treatment who wants to stay clean, sober, and healthy. We must close these glaring gaps, and the Heart Fund will do that. With $7 million in new funds and a federal match, our budget makes a historic investment. An additional $23.5 million per year will provide substance abuse prevention and treatment programs for our communities. And let me emphasize, thank you. Let me emphasize, this is not bigger government. It's a community grant program to help nonprofits and NGOs do the work on the ground in our communities. This makes our taxpayer dollars go much further. And it's where our focus lies, that's in our communities. With guidance and resources from the state to improve their response to addiction, our communities will lead this effort because they know what their local community needs. Successful prevention and treatment programs help people who have hit rock bottom regain their health, rebuild their lives, and become vibrant, productive members of our communities. In addition to making a historic investment in prevention and treatment programs in our communities, we must prioritize and invest in treatment courts. Treatment courts work. They reduce recidivism. They reduce drug use. They increase public safety, and they are much more cost-effective than incarceration. 3 years after completing treatment court, 70% of graduates are still clean and holding a job. But just don't take my word for it. Ask Judge Mary Jane Nisley in Yellowstone County, who started a treatment court there in 2010. Judge Nisley swore me into office a few weeks ago. I asked her to do it because of her experience and outstanding record. Her treatment court model is one we should implement throughout our state. For all those reasons, our budget provides funding for 5 drug treatment courts. And while we should focus on treatment for nonviolent offenders, we must maintain the rule of law. Montana has the highest violent crime rate in the Northwest, and we saw an 8% increase in violent crime last year alone, even as our nation saw a decline. Ladies and gentlemen, we are a nation of laws. That's why I support Representative Homeland's bill to ban sanctuary cities in Montana. And the hands of justice must be swift. That's why our budget provides for 2 new district judges in both Gallatin and Flathead counties. And it's why our budget adds 14 new parole and probation officers, since our officers are overwhelmed because of prior cuts and growing crime. And while we face an epidemic of drugs and increasing crime, we must also address the crisis of missing and murdered Indigenous persons. In Montana, Native Americans make up about 7% of our population, but they account for 26% of missing persons. Between 2017 and 2019, nearly 80% of those reported missing were teenagers less than 18 years of age. Native American women face a murder rate 10 times higher than the national average, and 84% experience some form of violence in their lifetime. Time is of the essence. We must act urgently to curb this tragic trend. It's critical that we bring all the voices to the table and that all the voices are heard. I ask the legislature to send to my desk a bill to extend the Missing and Murdered Indigenous Persons Task Force. And I want to thank Representative Sharon Stewart Paraguay of Crow Agency and Senator Jason Small of Busbee for their efforts on this legislation. Thank you. And since we're talking about saving lives, we must protect the lives of the most vulnerable, unborn children. I firmly believe life is precious and it must be protected. I urge the legislature to send me the Montana Pain-Capable Unborn Protection Act, which protects unborn babies by prohibiting abortion when they can feel pain. I also urge the legislature to send me the Born Alive Infant Protection Act, which requires doctors to perform life-saving care on a baby who's born as a result of a botched abortion. These are necessary, compassionate measures where we should all be able to find common ground. And I will sign both of them into law. As we work to lead the Montana comeback, we must keep hardworking families at the front of our minds. Every day they decide how to live within their means. State government should live within its means too, providing essential services and letting Montanans keep more of what they earn. Just because a state brings in more revenue doesn't mean we should spend it. I made a commitment to change how Helena does business, and our budget does that. Our budget is fiscally conservative. It's balanced. It's sound. It holds the line on new general fund spending, increasing an average of less than 1% per year. Our budget decreases general fund spending by $100 million when compared to the previous administration's that the prior administration had proposed. Our budget has a strong ending fund balance of over $300 million, $50 million more than the budget from the prior administration. Our budget does all these things without cuts to essential services. But it's not just about dollars and cents, it's about service. What kind of customer experience is state government providing to Montanans? In the last 3 weeks, I've started visiting our state agencies. It's been a great opportunity for me to meet some of the folks who serve our state. These visits have reaffirmed to me that we have many hardworking state employees who do their best for Montana every day. For too long, though, they just haven't been led well. After one visit to an agency, an employee who's worked there almost 3 decades told me, "I'm the first governor he's ever seen in his building." The first and only one. He works across the street, but he's never seen the state's chief executive in the agency's building. I was shocked to learn about his experience, just as shocked as he was to see me. If this is how business is done in Helena, it's time for us to change the way Helena does business. From decades in the private sector, I firmly believe that leaders set the tone and culture of an organization. Tonight, I make these commitments to you as your chief executive. I will be available, accessible, and accountable. I will provide our state agencies with a clear mission. We will measure our progress, and we will celebrate our shared successes together. I will emphasize providing exceptional customer experience to all Montanans. After all, you pay our salaries. We work for you. I expect our cabinet officials and agency heads to make the same commitments, and I'm proud of the outstanding team we've assembled. We look for change agents with the best qualifications and leadership experience needed to change the way Helena does business and lead Montana's comeback. And we got them. The members of our cabinet come with diverse backgrounds and experiences. All, however, are united in our shared commitment to make our state agencies more responsive to the people and more responsible with taxpayer dollars. That is the charge I've given them, and I am confident they will get the job done. I have charged Mike Foster at the Department of Agriculture to find ways to add value to our ag products here in Montana to preserve our brand through the supply chain. That way, our ag producers can capture more of the value they create. I've charged Hank Warsich at FWP to build stronger, better bridges with sportsmen, landowners, and outfitters. I've charged Amanda Castor at DNRC to bring more federal lands into active forest management so we can prevent catastrophic wildfires, have healthier forests, improve wildlife habitat, and bring back some of our good-paying Montana timber jobs. Our agenda is ambitious, but we owe it to you to be bold and to lead Montana comeback. Like you, I want our kids to enjoy a better life. Like you, I want to leave our state better than I found it. And while we have our differences on policy, that ideal, that we should leave Montana better than we found it, is what motivates everyone who serves here. That's why our agenda is ambitious. Because 4 years from now, I see a place where more Montanans are realizing the American dream, working hard, earning a good living, and raising a family. I see a place where our kids and grandkids stay in Montana because this is where the best opportunities are. I see a place where our communities are safer and thriving. I see a place where we have come through on the other side of this global pandemic stronger. If there's anything this year has taught us, it's that Montanans can handle anything. We met the test. Ladies and gentlemen, the state of our state is strong. But it's more than strong. The state of our state is resilient. We are ready for our Montana comeback. Like Montanans at home tonight, we will go forth from here, ready to face what tomorrow brings. We will overcome whatever confronts us together. Because Montana, that's what we do in Montana. We help each other. And because we are resilient. Thank you. God bless you. God bless America, and God bless this great state of Montana.
Joining me now is MTN Chief Political Reporter Mike Dennison with his takeaways from tonight's address. Now, Mike, you've heard a lot of state speeches. How did Governor Gianforte's stack up?
Well, I thought it was a very traditional summary of his agenda. We heard a lot of things that he talked about during the campaign and during his first few weeks of governor. He talked about his budget, his tax cut proposals to cut the top income tax rate, to reduce some property taxes and some other tax things. He also talked about his proposal to raise teacher pay, beginning teacher pay, and just a generally more conservative approach to government, kind of saying government should get out of the way when it can. And we also heard about the pandemic, tackling the pandemic, and his proposals along those lines.
Was there anything that surprised you tonight? Did you hear anything new?
There were a few things that, I don't know, but that surprised me, just a little bit different. One, he very specifically referenced the abortion bills, and we know that Governor Gianforte is pro-life, anti-abortion, and this is the first time that I've heard him specifically reference a couple of bills that were passed by the House earlier this week. One was to forbid any abortion essentially after 20 weeks of pregnancy. But the second one he talked about, he said, bring to my desk this bill called the Born Alive bill that says that any baby that's born alive after a botched abortion is a legal person. The bill as it's written now is a referendum that would go before voters. It almost seemed like he was telling the legislature, just make it a bill, make it a law that I can just sign into law. So that was something. And then he also talked about, he made a direct appeal to President Biden to send us more vaccines. I thought that was significant. And he mentioned something else about, when he's talking about taxes, he talked about the legislature should bring him a bill to continue to reduce income taxes as our economy grows. And I wasn't sure whether he was talking about an additional bill beyond reducing that top income tax rate, or if it was just the same thing he was talking about. And he also made no mention of charter schools or private schools. He's been a big booster of school choice, of using state resources to help private schools or charter schools. No mention of that at all. And I think that he wants to emphasize the teacher pay for public schools more.
And Mike, from a political standpoint, what did we hear? Is he extending any olive branches to the other side?
Not really. The Democrats have come out with some tax cut proposals just last week, a little bit different from his, and I think he made it clear tonight that's not going to fly. That he has people lined up to sponsor his bills, and those are the ones he's going to press for. And also, he talked about abortion. Of course, is that's kind of a stick in the eye of Democrats to say, bring these bills to me, and I'm going to sign them. They're going to restrict abortion. And finally, at the very end, when he talked about how state employees have been poorly led, and that I'm going to have a new approach. I mean, I thought that was something that was definitely a little bit unique, although at the same time, kind of a little backhanded slap to previous governors who have been Democrats. So.
Well, thanks for that analysis, Mike, and thank you for joining us for this digital presentation of the Governor's State of the State Address. Tune into your local MTN News at 10 o'clock for coverage from the Montana Capitol, including the response from Montana Democrats. We now return you to your regular streaming schedule. Good night.